Story 1. Mind tricks. We're lying on the floor of a stockroom in a gas station. Malia and I, the chubby, middle-aged clerk, and an old. Our couple I've never met are lying face down on dirty coal floors, surrounded by the detritus of running a small convenience store on a highway. The young man with the gun, no older than 19 and fidgeting with the telltale spasms of a meth addict, is screaming. This is not how I wanted to spend my day. I search his mind incessantly. Nothing is where it's supposed to be. What do you fear? What do you love? What can stop you? It's hard with meth addicts. The meth makes everything a jumble of incoherent, random images. I'm nearly giving up when I find it. A monster he's created. A fleshy, long-clawed beast with metallic teeth, dripping with black. I glance over at Malia and nod. It's okay. I try to tell her with my face, I've got what I need. What I am about to do requires a lot of energy. Fortunately, it's early in the evening and we haven't been on the road long. I should be able to summon enough to do what I need to do. I lift myself slowly off the ground, the other 3 hostages scolding me in hushed yells. You're going to get killed. Get down. Don't be a hero. Malia calms them quietly and nods. Close your eyes and cover your ears, I whisper back. The young man, Josh, is the name I've managed to garner from his racing mind, is rummaging through the locked case holding the OTC medicines behind the counter. He wants the pseudoephedrine and anything else he can get. The cash in the register will merely be an afterthought. My steps are slow and deliberate. He can't be allowed to see me until I've assumed the proper shape. It's Finn. A light transformed, and I stare through the new beast's large, wet eyes. I snore loudly and growl softly. Josh sees me, and everything drops. The items in his hands, his face, the contents of his bladder, he's pie. Dead behind the counter. There's no way to escape as I make my way slowly to him. The screams get louder and louder, and I drift into his mind again. Your soul, my monster voice growls. In his head, I know what you did to Cassie. I don't actually know what he did to Cassie, but I know she's in his brain, and there's an immense amount of guilt swirling around her. There's a good chance he doesn't even remember what he did. He begins to wail. I keep pushing every button I find, keep morphing my beast body to suit his worst imaginings. I promised Malia years ago that the worst damage I'd do wouldn't be permanent, but would be enough to effectively disable them for their natural lives. It's a brutal task, but it makes everyone safer in the end. When I'm done, Josh is in the fetal position, wailing incoherently. I'm back in my normal form, and I'm exhausted, sitting on the floor, propped up against the soda cooler. I call to Malia. It's all clear now. Everyone can come out. They creep slowly out of the room and stare at me. Wide-eyed. My color is gone. My lips are pale, and big dark lines have taken up residence under my eyes. Josh has stopped screaming and is now Watar, peering softly to himself. I give the clerk a solemn look. You don't want the kind of attention telling the whole story will bring you, I tell him. Erase the security tape, then call the cops. Tell them it was a weird freak accident that happened with the tape. Tell them our friend over here just came into your store and lost his mind. He won't be able to tell them any different. He nods at me. He's frightened but willing to trust me. The couple is staring at me with concern. You don't look good at all, the woman says, kneeling down by me. She's a mother, and my tiny pale frame and consumptive look is giving her pause. She needs to eat, preferably lots of protein, Malia explains. Malia knows the drill. She's been with me at this for a while. We can't stay here. I can't talk to the cops. Despite my abilities, I'm a terrible liar, and I don't like to do my mind trick on innocent bystanders. It feels like a violation. The clerk and the couple. He helped Molly get me out to the car. The couple knows a diner not far, and they want us to follow them there. They really need to talk about what happened. I trust Malia's instincts on this one, and she agrees to follow them. The diner is retro, looking more by lack of funds than aesthetics, something you'd expect to find on a desert highway. The waitress is older and doesn't look twice at my sorry ass. Tate. She's seen worse and isn't interested in finding out more. Her feet hurt and her bills are due. I order steak and eggs with the steak cooked as rare as possible, and devour it in nearly one gulp. When it arrives, the couple is remarkably calm for all they've witnessed, and I appreciate their stiff upper lip. The bloody meat, though a terrible cut, was enough to give me back my color and restore my energy. I eat my eggs like a normal human being. What do you want to know? I ask them. The husband, an older man who looks like he might work at the local branch of a bank, or maybe a kindly high school history teacher, clears his throat and whispers, "What are you?" I've been asked that before. When Malia first met me, when we were tiny youngsters, she asked me the same thing. I'm as human as you and the guy next to you, but with a major difference. I was born after my mother had been dead for about 5 minutes. She surprised a burglar who decided to stab her in the throat. I shouldn't have survived. Living things are not born of dead things, but it does happen. And when it does, those particles in the universe that are attracted to death, to miracles, to things which should not be, come and attach to whatever is left standing. That was me. Tiny, too weak, early neonate, coffin birthed, going against all laws of natural order. Living with these forms swirling around you gives you perspective on things. Everything is charge, particles, and wavelengths. Every action in context has a unique charge and wavelengths. Malice, love, lust, pain, joy, grief. There is no good or evil. Really, simply actions in context that emit an energy. Our energies impress on the energies around us and drift out into the world. I can manipulate these energies, though it saps a lot of my own. To do it, my mind trick is merely an ability to read the wavelengths and charges in a brain. The secret had one part right. What you put out, it'll affect you or me. It most definitely will come back to me. I explain as scientifically as possibly, realizing they may think I'm absolutely insane. They seem to be taking it in well. Maybe they believe in the supernatural or New Age bullshit. Either way, I'm grateful they are not freaking completely out. Not everyone handles it that well. My grandparents were not prepared for a newborn who would overload the breakers when she was wet or hungry, nor a toddler who would mess with the electronics for giggles. Knowing the two people you love the most are terrified of you is a lonely healing, especially when you can't control it. My grandmother's was into old world magic and decided to take me when I hit kindergarten. Things got easier as I learned control, I very nearly lived a normal life after that. The wife sighs deeply. This must be hard for you. I pause. It can be. But then sometimes I get to save people's lives. I smile. Talk turns to the mundane. Our jobs, their children, our dogs and cats, their family and business, a bookstore and a tiny California town tucked into the redwoods. We should come visit it. Numbers and addresses are exchanged, and we begin to leave. Check in on the clerk. If you're down this way again, I ask. I know he's all right. I got a sense he was tougher than he looked and pragmatic. He didn't want trouble. He wanted to run his business and raise his family. Malia turns on the car, and away we go back into the desert darkness. We'll find someplace to bed down for the night. Hopefully the rest of our trip will go smoothly. Hopefully. Story 2. Aokigahara. Within the tree lines of Aokigahara lies a dark and brooding history. For many years this place has been a key location for the people of Japan and even tourists from around the world to come throughout time, going as far back as the 19th century with a common goal: the ending of their own lives within the sea of trees. Because of this history that on this day, March 28, 2012, I've come here to do the same. I didn't come to this decision lightly. I gave it some thought for a long time now and have wondered for even longer how I would go about doing it. I considered hanging myself, but then I thought, what if my neck doesn't break and I just hang there, choking for minutes or maybe hours? Drug overdose was another option, but I couldn't come to a conclusion on what kind of drug I would use. And worse, what if I underdosed and I didn't die? Then I'd be forced to face my friends and family and have to explain to them why I would do such a thing. Eventually I decided that I would simply mortally wound myself with some form of serrated edge weaponry, which lead me to the purchase of the razor. I have brought with me today, however, the things that have happened within the past few hours have caused my plans to fall apart before my eyes, and now I find myself attempting to save my own life rather than taking it. If that isn't dramatic irony, I don't know what is. You see, when I arrived here in the sea of trees known as Aokigahara, it was nearly sundown. I had decided to wait until this point in time in order to avoid the wandering eyes of any hikers or explorers that might be in the area during the daylight hours. When I arrived, I had a feeling, that I was not alone, even though I couldn't see anyone else within what felt like miles of tree line around me. This feeling unsettled me, but I wouldn't allow a mere hunch that someone may possibly be nearby unnerve me and force me back into the depressing reality of my life that awaited me should I return unsuccessful to the real world. In fact, it could be said that the idea of a witness being nearby may have even steeled my efforts. As I continued on into the sea of trees, I saw the remains of those who had come before me earlier this year on the same mission. It pleased me to know that success was not as impossible as it seemed. However, as I passed by the dead bodies that hung from the trees around me, I once again felt as if others were watching me progress hurry into the forest. In fact, I could swear that I saw one of the hung men turn his head to watch me pass, but it couldn't have been real. They're all dead, just as I will soon be. Regardless of this fact, I could not shake the feeling of ethereal eyes gazing at me from every direction. By now the sun had set, and the light had long surpassed the tops of the trees, the pitch darkness of the forest seeming to be never ending. This same darkness is what caused me to fall off of the beaten path that I had been following in hopes that I would arrive somewhere close to the wind cave so that I may see one last glimpse of what little beauty this world had to offer before I finally made the step to move on to the emptiness of death. Now I found myself stumbling around in the dark forest, unable to find any way to return to any of the paths within the forest. As I got further and further from the path, it seemed that I passed by more and more corpses. One of the bodies that I passed by was like something akin to a scene from a horror movie I saw once. He was sprawled along the ground as though he was trying to crawl away from something. The even more disturbing part of this discovery was the condition of the body. It seemed as if he hadn't died more than a few days ago, and worse, something seemed to have either cut him at the waist or devoured his lower half. All that remained before me were the shattered remains of a torso and a look of pure anguish frozen on his face. Needless to say, the discovery of this body was a little more than I could handle, and I attempted to find my way out of the forest, now fearful of a fate worse than what I thought would be the sweet, silent embrace of death. As I turned to exit, I tried to retrace my steps, using landmarks I had seen up to now to find my way back to the long-lost path I had started on. However, I noticed something was amiss. It seemed as though a few of the bodies that were visibly hanging from the trees before were now missing. I brushed this off, assuming that it was just the mania from being lost setting in, until I heard something that resembled the sound of bones creaking from a sudden movement of joints that had been stationary for some time, not to mention the horrible smell that came with it. It smelled like 100 years of decomposition, and oddly enough, despair. I was frozen in place and had felt terror that overwhelmed my every nerve. I stood silently, making sure I had heard the sound at all, or if it was a figment of my imagination. When I heard it again, I felt my legs move before I was even aware of what was happening. I found myself sprinting through the tree lines in an attempt to get away from whatever it was that might be behind them. As I ran, I could see what I thought to be shadowy figures standing between the trees all around me, and once again I felt as though I was being watched. This was when I began to panic, my muscle twitching and jerking from fear as I ran through the trees at speeds that would impress Usain Bolt himself. Off in the distance I saw what looked like a person shambling towards the direction I was running, and turned to avoid that thing before getting close enough for it to take notice of me. I tripped over a root that was jutting out of the ground and fell head over foot down onto a pile of rocks, compact, fracturing my leg just above the knee. I've been here for hours now, and it's been just as long since I heard the creaking sound that led me into this horrible and painful situation that has befallen me since. I'm currently trying to scribble out my story in this journal before I pass out from the blood loss or worse. A warning to anyone who may find me or this book against making the same mistake that I made. Please turn back. Do not go into Aokigahara after nightfall. I can't explain whatever it is that's happening to me here in the sea of trees, but I fear it will be something worse than I could have ever had imagined before this day. My breathing has become labored, and the pain from the shattered bones in my leg is so excruciating that writing becomes harder and harder by the minute. But I know that if I don't finish out my warning, that the same thing or possibly worse may happen to the next ignorant person attempting to seek refuge in. Sea of trees after nightfall. I hear leaves rustling and the sound of the creaking of bones and the smell of rot all around me. I expect that whatever I was running from has now caught up to me. Hopeful. Why? I'll die before whatever it is gets to me first. As I look around, I can see the shape of a massive amount of bodies shambling towards me, and I now realize what happened to the man I saw on the ground earlier tonight. These things got to him before he could get away from them, and I'm more than likely going to suffer the same fate he did. I can only hope that my agony will be short-lived as the shambling corpses of the dead descend upon me. I have the razor that I brought handy, and will fight back with all that's in me. May God have mercy on my soul for ever having decided to come to this forsaken place. Last excerpt from a blood-spattered journal found near a tree within the Okigahara next to a dried puddle of blood on March 31st, 2012. Not far from the journal's location was the head of a man that seemed to have passed within the past 3 days. No connections have been found to indicate whether it belonged to the author of this excerpt. Story 3 of Sea in the Dark. I was well into spending my Friday night as I typically would, staying up most of the night playing games and looking at stupid meme sites. When the room went dark, my phone suddenly illuminated on the desk where I had just plugged it in, and I realized the power had gone out. I cursed softly as the screen went off. I knew the phone hadn't charged nearly long enough for me to use it as a light for any length of time, and I was relatively certain we didn't have any actual flashlights around. Just as I was wondering if it would be worth it to try to grope around in the dark for a lighter, I heard my roommate's door open across the hall. There was a brief shuffle of movement. Then I heard my own door open. "Hey, power's out, huh?" I can't see. Dared giving a smart-ass answer to this asinine question. But ultimately, decided it wasn't worth it. Yeah, seems like it. You don't have a flashlight, do you? In the near pitch darkness, I felt and heard him move farther into my room more than I watched him. Nah. Can you use your phone to see? I had just plugged it in 'cause it was almost dead. I should probably leave it alone just in case we actually need to call somebody. How about yours? Dead. So what do we do? I sighed inwardly. Jake was a good roommate. He always had his half of the rent on time. Didn't leave messes in the common areas or use my stuff without asking. And if I told him to stop doing something like leaving his coat on the couch instead of taking it to his room, he stopped doing it. But he was not the test guy and often looked to me to explain things or figure them out for him. Don't get me wrong, I liked him, but sometimes I started to feel more like his dad than his roommate. Lines I have to assume somebody in the building who doesn't have an almost dead phone has already called the super or the power company. So now we just wait. There's really not much else we can do. Oh, okay, well, can we just hang out till it comes back on? It's so dark. Again, it was hard not to respond flippantly to Jake stating the obvious, but it was true that there was really nothing to do until the power came back on but sit and talk. It seemed foolish to go offending him when he was to be my only companion, for God knew how much time. Sure, why not? Go ahead and sit down. I already sat down. I was surprised to realize that his voice had, in fact, moved to where my bed was in the room, even though I had not heard any movement. "Oh, cool. So how did you notice? The power had gone out. I thought since you're home you must have work in the morning, generally, unless he was scheduled to work Saturday morning. Jake would spend Friday nights out with his girlfriend. Like Jake, she was not terribly bright, but sweet and clearly devoted to him. I had been dreading the day he would say the two of them were moving in together, thus meaning I would have to seek a new roommate. I hated most people on principle, so the idea of having to find another one I could stand to live with was daunting to say the least. I woke up 'cause it's dark. It's never been so dark in that room before, naturally. This statement confused me greatly. I wonder if I'd heard him right. What, you woke up because it got darker? Yes, because of the dark. I still didn't think he was making a bit of sense, but he had just woken up after all. His initial response of yes, however, oddly unnerved me. Jake had been my roommate for over 2 years, and I felt very sure that in all that time he had never given an affirmative response that wasn't yeah or. Furthermore, we had had power outages before, so his tie-in that it had never been so dark in his room before didn't seem to add up. Then I remembered that he had recently gotten, or rather, his girlfriend had gotten for him some blackout curtains for his room to block out the sun when he needed to sleep during the daytime. If he had those pulled, they were probably blocking out any small amount of light that may have filtered in from outside before. Nonetheless, it seemed bizarre that it being especially dark had somehow woken him. Well, if you have work tomorrow, maybe you should try to go back to sleep. I'll stay up until the power comes back on. No, I don't want to go back to sleep. Let's talk, Dan. Unnerved was steadily progressing to downright freak out. Jake was a naturally laid-back and easygoing type of guy, so to have him suddenly use such a forceful and aggressive tone was very disturbing to me. Even worse, however, was him calling me Dan. One of the only habits I'd been unsuccessful in breaking Jake was calling me Danny. Eventually I had just given up and allowed it. I tried to tell myself that he was probably just tired, that was the reason for his uncharacteristic behavior. It dawned on me that I'd be much readier to accept that explanation if I could actually see him, as dark as it was in my room, even with a small amount of light coming in from a distant street lamp. I barely make out his silhouette on my bed, just a black, vaguely human shape in the darkness. Why are you calling me that, Jake? There was a moment's silence before Jake's voice responded now in a conciliatory, decidedly more Jake-like tone. That's what you prefer to be called, isn't it? You said so before. I can't fully describe the thrill of horror I felt as I realized that whomever, or whatever, I was speaking to was backpedaling. I was certain now that this was not Jake, and certain that whoever it was knew he had shown his hand a bit, and was now desperately trying to return to acting like Jake. The tone was good, unsure, almost apologetic. That was very much like Jake. The wording, however, was all wrong. And there was another problem I haven't mentioned, that in over a year, another pause, it was taking all my willpower not to jump up from my chair. Whether to confront the imposter or run from him, I wasn't sure. I think both the desperate ring hope that this really was Jake, as well as a notion that, if it wasn't, it was in my best interest to keep playing along, kept me rooted to my seat. Oh, haven't you? Sorry, I'm kind of tired. I can call you Dan, though, if you want. I couldn't take it anymore. This wasn't Jake. I was beyond sure of it now. I jumped up from my seat. Who the hell are you? I had only a second to reconsider the wisdom of choosing confrontation over fleeing as the imposter answered quickly this time, and in an appropriate tone of alarm. What do you mean? I'm Jake. The fuck you are? Tell me who you really are. I'm Jake. It's me, Danny. Really? Why don't you believe me? Because I can't fucking see you. And you're not acting like Jake. Yo, you aren't Jake. Who the fuck are you? I am Jake. I know you can't see me. Hey, wait. You said your phone wasn't quite dead, right? Let the screen come on just long enough to see my face. You'll see it. That's really me, Danny. This gave me pause. The voice in the dark was now sounding very convincingly like a frightened, confused Jake, and had quickly suggested I use my only light source to prove its identity. I was starting to feel increasingly foolish and chagrined at my paranoid freak-out, but still, I had to be sure. I turned to reach for my phone where I knew it was still sitting plugged into the inert wall socket. I picked it up, and the time appeared in white, causing a minuscule amount of illumination. As I was about to unlock it, it started ringing, Jake calling. I didn't turn. I slid my finger to the little green phone icon in a kind of surreal haze of disbelief. Hello, hey, Danny. I forgot my key again. Can you come let me in? Yeah. It's Jake. Hey, is the power out? It's all dark, and the phone went dead. Story 4. Missing teeth. When I woke up in the morning, I knew something was off. It wasn't until after my morning shower and shave that I figured it out. Not until my toothbrush slipped into a new gap in my smile. I froze, bristles bridging the gap, as I tried to understand what happened. Slowly, I removed the toothbrush from my mouth and stared in the mirror. Roar as I pulled my lips back, part smile, mostly grimace. There it was, under my whitewashed paste-smeared lips, and set in the sudsy white teeth was a little black window, upper set. Oh, any of the front ones. I'm not a particularly vain person, but this was upsetting. Missing teeth were for yokels, the homeless, people who got into fistfights over sports. I wear a suit, tie goatee. Oh, meetings. I have a secretary. Now, here I was, looking like I was dirt. What made this deterioration worse was that just a few weeks ago, I had noticed my hair was thinning. Now my anxiety flared and my mind exploded with reasons why my tooth could have fallen out. Was it because I only brushed my teeth once a day on the weekends? Or was it something with my gums I went through? Oh, the day with my upper lip curl over my teeth and my mind filled with every possible reason why my tooth was gone. My secretary scheduled a dentist's appointment for me later in the week. I didn't tell her why the next morning I was missing another one, bottom towards the back. No blood, no pain. There was a hole. I couldn't keep my tongue out of it, but that was it. Physically, at least. On the inside, I felt a constant claustrophobic panic. At home, every couple of minutes I would tear off my sheets or get down on all fours, spreading out like a stretching dog, fingers splayed, praying that some part of me would touch these lost teeth. They had to be somewhere. Maybe the dentist could put them back in. On the third day, my front 3 teeth on the top and bottom was gone. I almost cry. I was single, and all I could think about was how no woman would want someone with such a fucked up mouth. Every few minutes I reached into my mouth to push and pull on my teeth to see if they were loose. That is, until I began to the worrying that I was making them loose with all the tugging. I didn't go to work. I just called my dentist a half-dozen times, trying to get him to see me as soon as possible. The anxiety burned me out, so after I carefully brushed my teeth, I went to bed early. I don't know when I woke up, but when I did, I saw him. I don't know why I didn't scream or jump back against the headboard. Somehow, I just stayed still and watched him through slivers of open eyes. In the dark, I could just barely see the outline of his hunched back. His face was pale and waxy. His thin, round glasses caught the little bit of street light that came through my window. When he put his hand in my mouth, I tasted leather. Short, fat fingers pinched one of my teeth. I felt a quick, sharp slice into my gum, and then just a gap where my tooth was. He took for more, then creeped out of my room. The floorboards didn't squeak, and my door hinge didn't whine as he closed it. I didn't even hear the front door open and close. All I heard was a car starting and pulling out of my driveway. I didn't go anywhere the next day. My dentist's office called, but I didn't answer my phone or listen to their voicemail. I didn't move out of my bed. The hunger didn't bother me. I had fewer teeth than a jack-o'-lantern, and I couldn't imagine trying to chew with my asymmetrical maw. My mouth was dry, but when I thought about water, I thought about floods and mudslides washing away hills and houses and gums and teeth sliding down the back of my throat on a wave. I couldn't call the police. A man is stealing my teeth at night might as well be the password for a mental asylum. Instead, I tried to fight sleep. Every light was turned on, every TV on its loudest setting. My stereo cranked to its limit. When I woke up, it was in the silent dark, and he was there. He took 3 more that night. When he left, I followed. Where I walked, floorboards squeaked and hinges whined, but he didn't look back. I saw his car, some old steel boat with fins and white walls. After he pulled out, I ran to my car and went after him. He had to Now I was behind him. I kept my distance, because that's what spies and detectives do in movies. But at this time of night, we were the only 2 cars on the road. And I realized he's seen my car. Before we headed for the boondocks, rural roads I'd never been on. They were dark and narrow, turning back and forth, rising up into fog, then dipping down again. Trees flanked us. No moon or stars, just headlights that shined on the reflective markers on the guardrail. I didn't know what time we started, but it felt like we'd been driving for hours. Maybe he was trying to lose me, but I hadn't seen any other roads. Finally, after a long, curving ride up and then down a mountain, I started to see familiar roads. This guy was fucking with me. All we did was go in a big circle. These were the streets that took us out into the backwoods. The exact streets. We were going back to my house. But it wasn't my house. It looked like my house. But at my house, the mailbox is to the right of the driveway. Here, it's to the left, and in the yard was the birch tree I had cut down 2 years ago. He parked his car and walked inside. I followed right behind. I knew where he was going and how to get there. The layout was the same as my house, only the furniture was in different places. I walked back to my bedroom and pushed the door open with my fingertips. He had turned on a small lamp on the knit-stand. Mine had 3 drawers. This had 2, and he was already at work. In my bed, under the covers, was a lump of flesh. Someone, maybe the man, had skull, tit, crude arms, and a neck, and a soft, dented jawline. On the top of its head was an uneven, sparse tuft of hair, brown, same shade as mine. 2 small holes for a nose, angular divots where the yes should be. The sheets rose and fell with shallow breath. I watched him open up the lump's lipless oval mouth, and with crafter's precision carefully set my teeth into its gums. After they were in, he grabbed them, wiggled them, tugged on them. They wouldn't budge. Slowly, he turned from his work and looked at me. His face was yellow in the dim lamplight. The eyes behind the glass were little more than pinpricks of pupil. Over his shoulder the lump stirred. It struggled to breathe. Each exhale was a muffled internal scream. It tried to rise, tried to push itself up with boneless, flipper-like hands, but they just smashed useless against the mattress. The groaning breaths became more frustrated and angry as it struggled to prop itself up. When the lump finally shimmied itself against the head board, it joined the man in staring at me, and I stared back. First into its empty sockets, the same dull, slimy pink as a newborn baby. The room was getting smaller. The bulb in the bedside lamp explodes, and the only light comes from the man's tiny eyes, thin bolts of blazing yellow that cut right through the pitch dark of the room, illuminating little island of his sickly flesh. The pupils spread, the light widened, revealing more and more of his face. His mouth was opened, wide, unhinged. All I could see was teeth, slop, pili spiraling around the inside of his mouth until they disappeared into the dark of his throat. All I heard was the struggling breaths of the lump, now loud as thunder, but still maintaining that muffled quality. My eyes traced the spiral of teeth, straining to follow them into the cavernous black esophagus. I fell in and rode the spiral down. I woke up in my house, my real house. It was a few more nights before all my teeth were gone. Then I started to lose my fingernails and toenails. Last night he took my lips. Now there's just a gaping black hole in my face. I don't know what he'll take next, but I saw myself half-formed in that bed. I know there's a lot of work to be done. Story 5. Fresh Faces. Hi, I'm Seth. I'm writing this note, bottling tea and tossing it in the brook by my house. Writing helps me keep my sanity. Hopefully somebody who still reads will pick it up and come help me. It started a month ago. I was down in my basement office on my computer, watching old Mystery Science Theater 3000 reruns. The phone rang next to me, but I didn't pay any attention to it. It was never from me. On the off occasion it was. It was usually, why, brother, and half the time we were on the phone my nephew would be trying to grab it and talk to me himself. Mom yelled down the stairs that the phone was for me. Yeah, I lived at home with my folks. Sue me. Anyway, I picked up. Hello, I said, paying more attention to the antics of the robots on the screen. It's begun. The voice was little more than a whimper, a plea. I didn't to even recognize the voice. Excuse me, I asked, wondering who on earth was calling. They've come. I don't have much time. Jeff. You told me to call if what we did cause trouble now. A little worried, I said, I think you've got the wrong number. This is Seth, not Jeff. Don't go outdoors, the person shrieked. Completely freaked out, I disconnected the call. Must have been some prank caller, but I wasn't amused. Rattled, I put the matter behind me. Much later, I finished watching videos and shut the lights off to head upstairs. It was pitch black, but I knew the way the dark scene lit. Tla more oppressive this time, though. I shrugged off the feeling and went upstairs. As I passed through the living room, I chanced to look out the window. There were people outside. Oh, in a walk or something. I checked my watch, and it said 3 a.m. That's weird, I muttered. I stumbled up to my upstairs room and drifted off to sleep. I was a fool that first night. If I'd recognized what I'd seen, I would have saved myself the terror and just step outside the next morning. The news was on. Odd, since my dad usually turned to the sports channel before we went off to W. I didn't even glance at it as I threw on a tan, stumbled into the bathroom. An uneasy feeling crept into my gut as I did my morning routine. I usually had to fight for bathroom space, but today there wasn't a sound. I peeked out of the room and saw that the front door was open, but the glass storm door wasn't. There wasn't a sound. Looking outdoors, I saw those same people, as I'd seen the night before. I opened the door immediately there. Heads snapped towards me. I recoiled and leapt inside as quickly as I could, feeling something catch at my ankle as I did so. Their faces were fixed in expressionless gazes, their mouths slightly agape and dripping blood. I looked down and saw one right next to the porch withdrawing its arm. It had tried to grab me with a dizzying feeling of horror. I recognized my little brother. Slamming the door, I locked it tight and stumbled back into the living room. The television was reporting that a disease was spreading south from Canada across the U.S. I shut it off and pointlessly called out to see if anyone else was in the house. No answer. So began my solitary existence. The news ran for a few days before they were caught. Kept making the stupidest mistake, going home every night. The electricity has stayed running. I guess someone left the switch on at the factory, or maybe it's just or the New England that's been overrun. I dunno. The internet's been out too, so that's annoying. While the news was running, they called them zombies. Going back to that old stand. I guess it works. I mean, they don't do a whole lot, and they're definitely dead. They walk around until their legs rot out from under them. Then they crawl until they literally fall to pieces. While they've got legs, though, they're fast. That's how they jumped my family, I suppose. And the police car that drove up to the house to see if there were any survivors. That wasn't fun to look at every morning. They overturned my car while chasing him, so I'm stuck. Cops to the rescue again. They didn't really need food, so they didn't finish eating the poor guy, but they dismembered him. That's why he couldn't get up and join them. I could see him gnashing his teeth fruitlessly, though. For about a week, a guy on the radio hopefully pointed out that they were falling to pieces, so all we needed to do was wait them out. Then he got impatient, went outdoors. Nobody's been on the radio for 2 weeks. I'm in trouble, though. You see, the house has no food left. I can't wait for them to fall down dead all over again. I've made a couple expeditions to the general store, Lucky I had that sword collection upstairs. They're all too slow to catch me when I run, but there are so many that I sometimes panic. Last time they nearly got me. I broke the front door getting back in. Now the cold seeps in every night, and I can see one standing out in the porch right now, not 10 feet from where I'm writing. This you're safe indoors. Don't ask me why they abhor coming inside. Whatever the reason, it's been my lifeline. Unfortunately, why seem to know that there's someone alive in the house. Don't ask me how this fellow on the front step doesn't even have eyes anymore. Maybe they can hear a heartbeat, or smell sweat, or blood. I spent a couple days naming them. Some of the faces I recognized and gave their old names to them. The same old gang's been hanging around here for the last few weeks, slowly dropping in number. As they fall to pieces, they've never wandered off, though there are 79 who were once men and 63 who were once women out there. Once, just to see what would happen, I shot one in the here, with a shotgun, to see if the old shoot a zombie in the head, and they'd die for good adage had any truth. So I've actually got 79 who were once men, 62 who were once women, and one who was once a woman and decided to keep standing, even after losing about 80% of its head, and I'm down one shotgun shell. So they wait, and I'm losing it. I talk to myself constantly, and I ate a stuffed animal last night. The cotton went down hard, but it felt good to have something in my stomach again. There are no fruit trees around, and anyway, it's November. Water has been getting scarcer. The tap water stopped working 8 days ago. Lucky I'd filled the bathtub and every bottle I could find before it stopped. Oh, great. Now the lamp's getting brighter, and I hear a buzzing sound. I wonder if the power's going. Ooh, well, that wasn't fun. Total loss of power for days. Ever try sleeping in the dark knowing that there are things just outside that'll kill you and make you one of them the first chance they get? Probably, since these things are everywhere, as far as I can tell. Quick update. I mentioned Herschel, that guy on my porch. One of his legs fell off, so he's sitting down, sniffing at it. Thank God they lose all higher brain functions. I'm pretty sure the soul isn't held captive in these things, and that this is all the disease or whatever trying to spread itself as far as it can in the population. I don't know if you've noticed this, reader, but the animals just don't seem affected. It's a small comfort. Of course they die if they eat the flesh, but they don't get back up. Once they die, weird, I'm getting hungry and desperate. Maybe, just maybe, I can load the old .22 and bag a squirrel from inside. But how will I go get it? On one hand, I'm a bit more optimistic that you're out there now, whoever you are. The power couldn't have come back if there weren't people out there working to restore order. I am feeling lucky. Time to grab a sword and go. Drop this in the brook. Maybe this whole thing is almost over. Maybe, on the other hand, if it is almost over, why are there fresh aces outside today? Story 6, Phase 3. My name is Dr. Miranda Salmon. Until yesterday, I was a clinical research scientist for Payan Pharmaceuticals. I believe it is morally imperative that I warn the public. I see about a new drug that will soon be available. Do not, under any circumstances, take citalopram, which is being marketed as an anti-anxiety medication under the trade name Camoprax NT. United States patients enrolled in clinical trials of this drug experienced severe side effects, including death, worse than death, really. The animal trials were promising. So were the initial phases of human clinical trials. Of the small groups who initially took the drug, only 8% of the patients experienced side effects, all of which were very minor. Headaches, nausea, the usual things that are often listed in the warnings for many medications. It wasn't until phase 3 of the trials that the side effects became troubling. The company enrolled a total 2,453 patients at 4 clinical research sites across the United States. I made frequent visits to each site in order to monitor the trials. The problem began at Site 2. A 55-year-old male began experiencing severe insomnia after taking a 100 milligrams dose of citalopram once daily for 6 weeks. He checked into the emergency room of the county hospital, reporting that he hadn't slept in 10 days. He was also experiencing hallucinations and psychosis related to this lack of sleep. Upon admission to the hospital, he was prescribed several different sedatives, often in combination, none of which were effective. Within 12 hours, he fell into a coma. Brain death was pronounced 5 days later, and he was removed from life support. Vital functions ceased, and a resident called. At the time of death, the patient's body was transported to the morgue. However, employees in the morgue reported hearing strange noises from one of the units several hours later. They opened the unit, and patient crawled out, disoriented and incoherent. This incident was captured on morgue security cameras, and I have attached the video file to this email. The patient was rushed back to the emergency room, where he became agitated and had to be restrained. He became increasingly violent, despite multiple attempts at sedation, eventually breaking free of the restraints and injuring several hospital staff members. Hospital security officers fired a total of 8 shots at the patient, and he was pronounced dead again. I obtained the patient's medical files, including the autopsy report. The initial cause of death was listed as undetermined, possibly related to acute insomnia. The attending physician in the emergency room added a note that the resident who first pronounced the time of death must have made an error and had been put on probation. The autopsy findings included apparent massive alterations in brain chemistry, which left the patient's body unable to produce any of the hormones required for sleep or other normal functions. Please see the attached file, CRF 0058 for 69 for greater detail about this incident, including the clinical trial records, patient medical records including autopsy report, witness statements, and photographic records of the injured hospital staff members. I presented THIS information to my superiors at Apollon. Manufacture of the drug was halted, and a massive investigation began, the details of which can be found in the attached file. Investigation. No adulteration, contamination, or other problems with the manufacturing process were discovered. The RAND group was unable to determine whether the drug could have caused the hormonal changes the patient experienced. The clinical trial had continued during this time, with a warning for the staff to watch for any patients reporting insomnia. and remove them from the study. Manufacturing resumed, and at one meeting I attended, the marketing VP said, "A lot of drugs cause insomnia. We'll just put it in the list of side effects." I reported this incident to the FDA and sent my contact all of the information related to it. He agreed with the company's assessment that the incident may have been an isolated adverse reaction and that the evidence was inconclusive to support the hypothesis that the patient's symptoms had been caused by citalopram. I received similar responses when I escalated the report to his superiors. 2 weeks later, Site 1 reported removing a patient from the study due to self-reports of insomnia. This patient was a 23-year-old female who reported 3 consecutive days without sleep. She had been taking a 50 milligrams dose of citalopram once daily for 4 weeks. Site 1 staff members told her to stop taking the drug and sent her to the nearest emergency room for evaluation. She was found to be healthy and sent home. However, the next day, her mother found her collapsed on the floor of their living room, apparently in a coma. She was transported back to the hospital, where she remained in a coma for 6 days until she was declared brain dead. Cessation of all vital functions also ceased shortly thereafter. However, within 4 hours, she awoke, though she was incapable of coherent speech. She quickly became agitated and violent, and was restrained and moved to the psychiatric ward of the hospital. She was then removed to a maximum security psychiatric facility, where she remains. Please see the attached file, CRF 098537, for greater detail. In total, 27 incidents were reported, each with the same presentation and clinical course. See attached files. Though this is only 1.1% of the total study population, I find it deeply disturbing. I presented my concerns to my superiors and to the FDA, but I was told that the percentage fell within acceptable limits for risk. I disagree. If the study numbers are extrapolated and the percentage applied to the entire population of the United States, approximately 313.9 million people, as of this writing, the projections become appalling. 3.5 million people could be affected by this drug in such a manner as I've described. Despite all of this, citalopram was approved for sale yesterday. The company has projected that it will break all of the previous sales records for anti-anxiety medications. I've presented this information to government authorities and to all the mainstream media outlets. Any calls and emails have been ignored. The reporter I spoke with in person at my local Fox affiliate laughed me out of her office. You're my last hope of making this information known to the public. I hope you will post my remarks, along with the attached evidence, to your website. I have also created a video record of these remarks, which can be found at the link listed below. I doubt you will hear from me again. I believe I am being watched and followed by Apollyon agents. Please make sure the public knows not to take citalopram. Sincerely, Miranda Solom, on Ph.D. Clinical Research Scientist to Apollyon Pharmaceuticals. This email, along with the files and video statement, was posted to an alternative news website last night. The marketing VP explained to the group of executives after they had finished watching the video. Mostly the site is full of crazy conspiracy theories, like the president is a reptilian ally, and other bullshit. But this has been getting some traction. The video version of her statement has over 100,000 views on YouTube so far. I've already got the lawyers on it. The CFO said they're going to get YouTube to take the video down, and they're making the usual threats to the conspiracy site. But it's out there, the CEO said. People have already seen it, copied the information to other places. What are we going to do about that? The marketing VP suggested. What do we have on her? Does anyone even know where she is? Representatives of the company stopped by Dr. Solomon's house early this morning. The CFO said they found her dead. Gunshot wound to the head. Self-inflicted? The CEO asked. Undetermined. They couldn't find a gun anywhere. The CEO looked around the conference table. Okay, which of you did it? The executives laughed, though no one took. The team left a gun there to make it look like suicide. The CFO said the local cops are so inept that they won't look any further. Once she's discovered, we'll release some statement saying she'd been behaving erratically and was put on leave to seek counseling or something. PR. Get your team started on that. The VP of Public Relations nodded. Now the CFO continued. I have some projections regarding the effect this could have on sales. He clicked over to a PowerPoint presentation and guided the group through several slides full of charts and graphs. In the end, I predict only a 9% revenue loss for this product in the coming fiscal year when compared to initial projections. That decreases to 7% the following year, and so on. As people forget about all this, we will have to add coma and psychosis to the list of rare side effects. But overall, I think we should be. Feeney, the marketing VP, said. What a fucking shitstorm, the CEO said. But I guess that's all we can do. Should we have breakfast brought in? Story 7, Joondalup. In the 1970s, the city of Perth, Western Australia, experienced an urban sprawl that made its suburbs clamber up and down the coast of the Indian Ocean. These Cebu are BS tenuously connected by fragile railways, like a spider web, was where I lived as a child. These novel infrastructure developments meant that I was isolated to only my hometown, unable to find a reliable way to roam. For that reason, my friends and I would often spend a lot of time at the namesake of our suburb, Lake Joondalup. Our group was a bit of a motley, connected bee. Why our own tenuous thread? We all love to explore the bush, which at that point had yet to be swept aside by the development. Now, despite a wide circle of friends with similar interests, I only really felt close to a young boy called Tristan. He was a large child with a kind manner and a jagged row of white teeth that contrasted sharply with his dark skin and soft features. We loved the night. We loved the late evenings where a new world opened up to us around the lake. We would continue to explore the tree-lined banks after most kids went home for dinner. This day, we each had been skipping stones across the lake while discussing the short assignment our teacher had set. Tristan, being Aboriginal, had been given the assignment of finding out the meaning of many of the words we had in our day-to-day life that came from the first Australians. So I said, tossing another rock into the lake, what does Joondalup mean? I actually know that one. Tristan had picked up a larger rock than usual, and he weighed it in his hand as he thought about the best way to articulate his answer. It means place of shining or place of white. No way. That's so lame, I said with all the seriousness a fifth grader could muster. You're lame. Tristan ditched the rock at the water beside me, and some of it splashed on my new white socks. I charged at him, trying to avenge myself for the inevitable wrath of my mother. He turned and legged it with surprising swiftness for such a large boy. We both ran through the bush, our chase, taking us right along the edge of the lake. The next thing I knew, Tristan, maybe 3 or 4 paces in front of me, tripped. I saw him stumble, his ankle twisting in an odd fashion, before he keeled over and plunged straight into the dark water of the lake. The banks were a sharp, 2-foot drop into water that was deep enough to submerge him entirely. He surfaced Christ. He squealed as I kneeled on the bank to try to help him out. It's so cold I didn't respond. Behind him was a white shape, blurry in the dark water, but rapidly sharpening like an inverse silhouette. Yeah, let's go. I reached out to help him when suddenly the shape seemed to unfurl, wrapping itself around Tristan and dragging him downwards. My heart began to jackhammer against my ribs, causing the blood to pound in my head. Tristan surfaced and flailed. I didn't hesitate, grabbing the back of his shirt collar and pulling him upwards as a pair of milk-white arms, each finger tipped with gleaming claws, snatched at him from the lake. He was hurt bad. His ankle was swelling and already mottled with bruising. I tried to drag him, carry him, but he was far too heavy. We bled along the rocky path, my legs nearly buckling as Tristan leaned on me. It wasn't far to the break in the trees and the road beyond, but we barely got 20 feet from the lake before I looked back, darkened against the reflected moonlight. I saw the creature standing on the banks. Its form is etched like a carving on the inside of my skull. It had a human body with broad, masked, ewe-lined shoulders and a long neck like that of a deer, except it stopped abruptly, like it had its head severed at the base of the skull. That was not the worst part of it, though. The best way I can describe its legs were how one would expect a child to stack Lego blocks. They were many-jointed. From the ankle upwards they stacked on top of one another, but not quite matching up, giving the impression of a jagged zigzag. I began to whimper, and Tristan stopped to look behind him. I felt his grip on me slacken, and he also made a soft noise. I knew the noise. It was when your body was seizing up from the inside out, the nerves firing rapidly as your body began to employ its emergency response to fly. Let's go, our pace quickened. Behind us I could hear the rustling of undergrowth and the light step of a pursuant. We fumbled faster. Tristan's face was red and puffy, and the roaring in my ears had reached a deafening crescendo. We dared not to look back, our eyes fixed ahead on the murky light of the street lights. Tristan jerked and was lifted out of my grip. I tried to hold on to him, but I found myself shaken off like a dog shaking its prey. I flew through the air, crashing into a tree and slumping into the undergrowth. My vision filled with stars, turning into flashes and eventual darkness. Tristan's terrified screams faded away and, unconsciousness. When I came to, it was silent. I sat up, my breath ragged. It was well into the night, and a chill had descended onto the bush, meaning it was in the early miz. I tried to stand up, but the world lurched and turned on its side as a flash of pain threw me onto the ground again. I struggled to get up, but through it I began to feel unsettled. I could hear footsteps, Sacco, eddy us apart, like something was taking a step and waiting. I lay down again, peering through the leaves. It was itchy and sticky down there, but I felt deep in my stomach that what was out there did not have any good intentions toward me. It took a few minutes to appear on the path, but there it was, that thing again. It turned out that it was not waiting, but its legs were lengthening, allowing it to take huge strides. Now I realized it was stepping backwards. Yes, I could make out its shoulder blades and the jagged line of its spine as it walked up the path. Its neck was swaying as if it was looking around behind it. As it drew level, I had to bite down on my tongue to stop me from crying out. It was carrying Tristan's limp body in its arms, his he'd weight barely seemed to register as the creature cradled him. Like a baby, it drew level as I was processing the sight of my friend, and I saw that at the end of that neck, where I had not identified ahead, was a face, a flat human face. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing the creature to go away. It walked up and down the path, and even through the bush. It passed within feet of me. I could hear the sound of its joints popping as it moved. Its shadow blotted out the moonlight periodically, but it never found me. They found me just after sunup. I was still curled at the base of an ancient white gum, sobbing silently. They nearly missed me as I was obscured by a thicket of some spiny shrub, but there I was, clutching my knees to my chest and whimpering softly. They did not find Tristan, but they found clumps of his hair and scraps of clothing on the undergrowth, at about an adult's shoulder height, like he had been carried. I gave a statement to the Pollock, and was given therapy. About a week later, a strange whitish scum floated to the surface of the lake, collecting at the banks and coating the water in a horrible film. This scum was found to be human fat that proved a DNA match to the kidnapping victim, Tristan Cole. The memory faded from my mind. The disappearance was chalked up to a suspected homicide. The vibrant memory became a distant shape, backlit by the moon and reflection off water. Sometimes my fear would rear its ugly head when I drove past the solid wall of trees that made up the edge of the lake race. But it was nothing more than a traumatic event, folded away into a corner of my mind that was, until last week, when the thought of the creature was refreshed, given a new coat of fear-induced detail. Running in the local paper, The Weekender, was an article on new findings in the etymology of the word Joondalup. New research suggested that Joondalup meant place of the sea, creature that can only walk backwards.